I was like you guys. I thought 10.3%, like just the headline figure, you think, this is government, stretched finances. You're thinking a double-digit increase, ain't that bad. I was like, secretly, I thought this is actually, I'll take that. But I think when you dive in a little bit, welcome to the Pharmacy Planet podcast. This one's special. It's a contractor verdict on the new pharmacy contract. Thanks for tuning in to the new Pharmacy Planet podcast. This is a contractor special. If I can get you guys to introduce yourself.
My name's Sean. I'm a contractor. I've got 2 pharmacies in Surrey.
Hi, my name's Suraj. I'm from the Jade Pharmacy Group and we are based in North West London in Hertfordshire.
Hi, I'm Cash.
Wait, Cash.
Hi, I'm Cash of Ismail. I'm from Remedy Pharmacy in Ealing, and I'm also a GP pharmacist within Ealing as well.
Thanks for joining me, guys.
Thanks for inviting us.
Right. So when it comes to the pharmacy contract, most people think that it's relevant to pharmacy contractors because obviously it affects us greatly. But it's not just us, is it? It affects pharmacists, it affects their wages, affects staff wages, it affects what rent we can pay, it affects what refits we can have. So the actual knock-on effects of this are massive. And I would probably say it affects tens of thousands of people, if not more. So it's a big effect. So we're here to break this down and see what other contractors think about the new settlement this year. I'll start with the high-level figures. We've been told that there's going to be a 10.3% uplift in pharmacy funding. That equates to about 340 million. Just initially, what did you think when you first heard that there was going to be a 10.3% uplift? What were your initial thoughts? Sean?
Well, good. Double figures is always a good start. It's interesting the number of people that you say are affected. I think what we really got to think about is the patients are going to be the most affected because the service level changes depending on what our funding is more than anything else.
Yeah, I meant to say that as well. So obviously they're the main driver.
But overall the headline looks good, looks great. It's when you start diving a little bit deeper to find out where that 10.3 is and how it's kind of what's cut as well. That it's not a straight 10.3, is it?
Okay, and what did you think, Suraj?
Yeah, I think Sean's covered pretty much what my thoughts are as well. I think, look, I think we're all struggling in primary care at the moment. There are challenges. And so I think that having the uplift definitely helps. And I think also, as we can see, the direction of things are changing as well. So it was positive news to hear that there is an uplift. But as Sean said, I think whether it's enough or not remains to be seen, because I guess the landscape's changing for us as well.
Cash?
It was good news, but I'm concerned because I normally think nothing's given for free. So if they're giving us more money, they're going to expect more things from the already stretched services that pharmacists and pharmacies are providing. So I'm concerned. I have concerns because I'm thinking that remuneration that they're talking about, that uplift, what more work are they going to ask pharmacists to do that are already, what I feel in many departments, overstretched and overworked? So, yeah, happy but concerned as well. So, let's see how that.
So let's dive into the details a little bit. Yeah, I think the bulk of this 10.3% is a 200 million uplift. Yeah. I was like you guys. I thought 10.3%, just the headline figure, you think, this is government, stretched finances. You're thinking a double-digit increase, ain't that bad. I was like, secretly, I thought this is actually, I'll take that. But I think when you dive in a little bit, you start coming across problems and issues that I have concerns with. The bulk of it is a £200 million increase into the drugs budget, basically the margin we make on medicines. Now, according to last year, I think there was roughly about 239 million overspend on medicines last year. Now, we all know that last year was a challenging year. So in theory, the 200 million is probably not going to go very far compared to last year's budget. So I think it's more of the same compared to last year. So when I looked at the 10.3%, is like, right, sounds good. At least we've got something on paper, but it's probably not much different from last year. So what do you think, Sean?
I get a bit stumped by margin, to be honest, because it's not very clear how it's all worked out.
You don't believe it, do you?
It's not that I don't believe it. I just like a bit more transparency about it.
Exactly,
Because what
yeah,
happens is we get a certain amount and it's okay. And then we get these clawbacks. And then there's no published data onto how they actually came up with these figures. There's nothing anywhere. All they do saying is they give us a margin survey. Someone has to dig up all their invoices for X amount of days. Takes away more time. And then they give us a figure that they say they're taking back off us. So from that kind of point, I would have liked to see the money invested in us in a different way. Maybe higher single activity fee, something like that. Just because it's very muddy, the whole margin kind of system. And I think the government have their cake and eat it with that one, because they kind of use us to keep the prices low. But then they're taking that money back from us. So not wholly as supportive of it.
Suraj?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think the transparency bit is the key thing. I think it's never clear cut. And, we all know the challenges at the moment we're having with drug shortages. And liaising to Kash's point earlier about the fact that our teams are stretched, they're spending a lot of time on procurement.
Yeah.
And that is affecting the core job of us actually looking after patients, by actually providing other services, because you're having to spend time to try and make sure you can get hold of the medicines and that. So I think I agree. I think there needs to be transparency around that aspect of it. Equally, it would be great if, I know the NHS has its own procurement that it does for hospital pharmacy, for example. So, they are aware if there are shortages and things like that. It would be great if obviously, they liaise with CP around those things, and there's some reflection to help support contractors over there. Obviously we have multiple branches, so we're in a slightly different, different kettle of fish, but I always think about those people who have got, one pharmacy and that, and the challenges that they might face. And I think that's where this whole thing comes in, about the fact of they do need that support.
So yeah, I mean, kind of agreeing with mostly what Suraj is saying. What I find is that in pharmacy, we're firefighting. Whenever shortages happen, we are having to react. What I'm looking at is the government has the information. They know that there's going to be a price increase, that things are changing. Get ahead of the curve. They've got the data before we get it, so they should know. So what I'm hoping is that these fundings, they get ahead of it, so they know that there's going to be a shortage, rather than the pharmacies, having to firefight at the last minute. That they know that there's going to be a challenge here, so they've uplifted the drug tariff. They've reacted before pharmacies having to feed back to them and saying, "Oh, look, there's a price increase on this particular drug. Can you change the tariff?" Or we're going to the concessions. I think we need to move away from that model. I think the government needs to get ahead of it, so they need to know. The NHS needs to know that. Then they do, like he said, from hospitals, they already are procuring these medicines already. So, they know about these price increases. So don't wait till the contractors are then feeding back to you and then you put it into price concessions. Get ahead of the curve.
Because it's not just price increases, is it? Sometimes the stuff's just not out there.
The shortages.
Yeah, and then if we can't get it, we're having to contact the doctors. Someone's going to have to basically from the doctors, they start asking other pharmacies. And we got to the stage where within our PCN, we were basically had this WhatsApp group where you just and then someone would say, "Yeah, I've got it here." And then we just as contractors, we were like, "What are we doing?" Because all we're doing is just basically suddenly we're saying we've got one, they take it, and then we haven't got it left for our own patient.
Dispensing at a loss is, I think, the one thing that I have a massive bugbear with. That as a contractor, we shouldn't have to dispense
We need
at
to
a
be
loss.
protected for that, yeah.
When you dispense a drug and then you have to wait till the end of the month to find out if you're going to get that cost covered. If not, you've just dispensed at a loss. I don't think any business operates like that. And so I think that is something that does have to be looked at.
So the UK, I think, and don't quote me on this, but I think roughly spends in community pharmacy or in primary care, roughly about 11 billion on drugs a year. It's something like that. Yeah. Now, the problem with the drugs pricing is, we've hammered down generic pricing to a very low level. They're cheaper than chocolate bars at the moment. Yeah. So you're talking about an extremely low level for drug pricing. The problem is their wholesalers are not making enough margins now within these products. Now, most people know that there's not enough margin. How much margin can you have if they're selling it to you for 20p, 30p? There's nothing in there. The problem is, when it comes to wholesalers, they amend the price depending upon what we are getting reimbursed at. So, for example, if the reimbursement price is £1, they might charge 70p. If the reimbursement price turns £1.50, all of a sudden that product can become £1.10, £1.20. And they are amending it. So the government is thinking that they are the ones that are moving the market. So when it comes to overall pricing, their concern is right now, from a government's perspective, that they need these prices. They are moving the market. They need them capped. Now, if prices go above that level, what they're saying is they will maintain the margin and you will get it at some point. Yeah. So they're using community pharmacy as like a pawn and we're caught between a rock and a hard place. The government can't move, otherwise there'll be a runaway on the budget. Before you know it, that 11 billion can become 12 billion, 13 billion, like that. Yeah. And right now, community pharmacy doesn't have, we don't have the clout, the leadership or the strength to be able to do anything about it, because the government's like, well, we're not going to let this get out of hand. We know the system isn't perfect, but like it or lump it, this is the system, because we're not going to let the drug spend get away. So the question we've got is, as much as it's unacceptable to us and no other business would work like this, I can't see the government moving on this very easily, mainly because they're looking at their drug spend. The spend, what we're talking about on the odd, line, they don't really care about. And the other thing is, we know that any drugs margin is not equally distributed depending on your dispensing. It all depends on what's being prescribed. So you might have a larger portion of the margin, or you might have a really slim portion of the margin, depending on the length of treatment, depending on what's prescribed. Now, as far as the government's concerned, it's not there to fix your little pocket either. They don't care. They don't seem to care. As far as they're concerned, they're looking at the wider picture. This is the drugs budget. We need to get this down. These guys are there and they're going to help us get this down. And what leverage do we have? The fact that, because I don't think anyone would disagree with anything you guys have said. And I think everyone's tried it. I don't think it's really worked.
Look, like you gave the example of, medicines becoming cheaper than chocolate, but no shopkeeper is going to sell a chocolate at a loss. And that can't be asked for us to do the same thing, okay? We can't be asked to be dispensing at a loss and making that loss, because ultimately, if they want us to remain within those communities to serve the population, then we need that support back. And that comes partially from the drug budget. At the moment, yes, I do believe pharmacy needs to innovate and change its ways. We need to be more service driven, and our funding should be related to our services and our patient base. What I do think is that the drug budget is something that shouldn't be capped, like you're saying. If they're saying it's 11 billion, well, you can't expect contractors to be dispensing at a loss, because they're not loss leaders. We're not inviting patients in by, making a loss on aspirin and that will encourage them to come and get their medication from us. We're not that type of business.
Just quickly, has anyone seen unintended consequences, like people, like contractors actually not dispensing, or you wouldn't know, not dispensing, or all of a sudden you've got prescriptions coming back that the pharmacy doesn't have, and it just so happens that line is over tariff, but may be available.
So
have you seen that?
definitely in GP pharmacy, I'm seeing that a lot. So in the GP practices, we are getting lines, which I'm aware of.
Take note, people. Yeah. This is unintended consequences of this. Yeah, go on.
We can't expect. At the same time, I'm mindful of it. I'm looking at those same, practice pharmacies. We feel for them. We can't expect them to be dispensing at losses. They will end up in closures. We've had the most amount of closures in the last 3 years than we had in the last decade. And that's coming from the fact of these kind of losses that pharmacies cannot keep on sustaining. It's not sustainable.
Yeah, I think it's the unknown. I don't think any business operator would operate a business knowing that there's a lot of unknown. And I think that's become more apparent with something like this, is to say that, with all these shortages and that, or if, suddenly I'm going to dispense a drug at the beginning of the month, am I going to get paid? Am I going to get paid at least what I paid for it?
Yeah.
Um,
Let alone have to pay your bills, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think that is where I think that is not fair on anybody. That expectation on a pharmacy owner is not justified. And taking Sean's point, I think we understand that they have to take a broader view. They can't look at things as as isolated.
They probably
cases.
can with data available nowadays.
Well,
So I think, times they're still working in a very antiquated way. I mean, you look at any other business function now, they got granular data. So you say they can't, but I think they can. If they wanted to, they could, and it won't take a lot, I don't think.
If that's the case, then I agree. Then they should be saying, actually, hold on, we can see this. And I think there's also a lot around, there's things like, the prescribing of branded generics, things like that. That hasn't helped matters at the end of the day. What happens is you'll get it happening in one ICB, then other ICBs follow suit. Suddenly you've got, the demand exceeding supply, and you've almost done the full circle.
There's a £340 million uplift. A large portion of it was the margin that's gone into medicines. I think we're all in agreement. No one's even sure that they're going to get it, whether they're going to see it. It's very opaque. No one's sure whether it's going to make your bottom line. So I think for all intents and purposes, us as contractors, what you can't do is you can't start spending on that. You can't invest with that. You can't turn around and hire people with that. You've actually given us a number that we can't actually do anything with until maybe a few years down the line and you see something in your pocket, right? So you can't even do anything with
It's
it.
going to be difficult to prove.
Well, exactly. You couldn't, yeah. So
they could say, you're going to have this much money, and
You might have it in your pocket, but they might claw it back as well. So
oh yeah, that's another thing,
so you
right?
don't know what you're
I
gonna
think we can approach clawbacks, right? So you put certain amount of money in there. The government tells you how much you've earned. You may not have earned it. You're wondering, I haven't earned it. This is the problem, right? We think, well, my branches haven't earned it. It must have gone to someone else. Then I speak to someone like Suraj, and Suraj is like, it weren't me. I haven't got it. So I can only assume that Cash has got all our money.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So he must be sitting there with the most optimum prescribing in the branch, and he's sitting there with a vast portion of the budget because it's not coming my way. It's either that or Sean, nice and quiet. He's not saying anything either. You know what I mean? So
I don't rely on budget.
no, but I think that's the problem, right? Is it even coming? And would you now, in your business, even if you needed it, how quickly would you hire someone or get a refit or buy a robot? What is your thought process on actually investing in your business, knowing that you've got a bit of extra money coming your way?
We touched it downstairs, like NHS. You talk about lines being loss leaders. When you actually drill it down into the actual numbers, the whole NHS dispensing side is a loss leader because the actual amount of money that's actually costing to do all this stuff. I'm not making enough money to actually sustain owning a business.
Yeah.
It's just not true.
Yeah.
So it's just bringing in people who we can upsell.
Sean, you were supposed to be
Private
supportive
stuff
of
too.
this contract.
I'm supportive of where we are compared to where we're going. Yeah, I'm supportive that we've had an uplift at least.
He's like, I'm glad we had an uplift, but we're still losing loads of money.
I haven't seen the uplift. Yeah, if it comes on the bottom line, all well and good, but I'm not going to go and assume we're going to get that much money.
Yeah.
People are saying, oh, you're going to get an extra 50 grand or whatever. Until I actually see that money there is the only time that I'm going to spend that money.
I don't think there's that kind of money that we could actually forecast to say we're going to make some infrastructure changes.
Yeah, because
in
we've
that,
got 6p, 6p
I'm going to invest in a robot.
Yeah.
That's, which is where we would want to be. Actually, yes, we want to be making changes to our pharmacies to be, fit for the 21st century, fit for the kind of demands that the public are making from us and that's being put onto pharmacy. But that can only happen if that funding comes to us in maybe a lump sum, rather than them saying to us, it's going to come to you within the margin, and we're still looking for it on our bottom line. Where has it come? Has it come? Has it come?
But it's
And
all- it's
what
all
are they
come
going
to
to
you,
claw
that's
back?
what we're saying.
See,
Do you know what I mean?
I don't have a robot in my farm. That would be the first thing I'd want to do.
I've got a robot. But I paid for the robot during our private work. As soon as the private work came in, it was just like, we'll use it to get a robot.
I think you touched on a really good point there, Sean. We are not as contractors, we are not indicative of UK pharmacy, mainly because I think, especially you guys, based mainly in the southeast. Yeah. So everyone knows that NHS services are stretched. It is difficult. A lot of people are relying on private services to subsidise their NHS services. There's other areas of the country where that is just not possible. Yeah, it's not possible. So when it comes to a national contract, they're not looking at actually, someone in leafy Surrey they'll be all right. They've got to look at the whole lot, right? And you just hit the nail on the head there. It was almost like Sean said, well, I've got a robot and I've got private services. You might as well say, so I'll be all right. Yeah. I'll be all right. But the thing is, there's going to be a lot of people who aren't all right, right? So,
Look, I think the direction is changing, has changed.
Yeah.
And we've seen it change from the time, Boo, when you, I guess, started, bought your first
All those
pharmacy.
years
Yeah.
yeah, many years ago. Yeah. The apothecary.
Literally, with the pestle and mortar. Yeah. I think
I did used to do that.
Yeah? Did you make him do it? I think the
As
key
his
thing,
apprentice. Yeah.
I think the key thing is that, the landscape has changed, patient demands have changed, patient needs have changed over the years. And I think that obviously the government is the one that has the pressure ultimately of being able to respond and answer to that. And, I think us on the ground level have that responsibility. We're the conduit. So, between the patient and the government, we're the one that is sort of feeding back both ways. I personally think for the pharmacy profession, we are going in a much better direction. We were talking about it the other day to say the role has changed now more towards becoming a clinician. And I actually, that really excites me because, the studying that I didn't study for 4 years, then do some training for a year to stand somewhere, to tick a box. Now with all the IT infrastructures and that, it does it much more accurately than I can. Right. But actually, the exciting bit is the clinician aspect of it. And, I think that's what we are now being asked and what's being asked of us.
But on that, sorry to interrupt, I do think there's still a cost involved with delivering those medications in a safe clinical way. It's all well and good saying we want to be clinicians. We do want to be clinicians. We want to help more as much as we can. But we need more money for that. And this £17 to be an IP per consultation, that's not enough money to justify doing that.
I
You
agree.
can't just say like, okay, that's easier now. There's still a cost involved and everything is costed.
So we're talking about dispensing, we're talking about medicines, we're talking about margin. Yeah, I've got a real issue because we can talk about margin, and what they do is they fix the margin, be that 900 million or 1.1. Now, 700 million, 900 million, 1.1 billion, whatever the margin is. Yeah, the price of drugs is rocketing. Now, there's always in every business, there's always shrinkage. And I've been shouting about this a while, yeah? An item comes in, it's either missing, it's either squashed, it goes out of date, this stuff goes in the bin, yeah? Now, the problem is right now, with a lot of new medicines, they're expensive. Do you know how many like Mounjaros you might have in the fridge, right? You get paid a fraction, like a couple of pounds, to dispense something that might cost almost £300. Yeah. Now you have one of those lost. Can you imagine? Like you can't. So any business has a certain level of margin you need, and it's not because you necessarily need to make all the margin on the product, but you get shrinkage. So there's whether it's missing boxes or whether it's stuff in the fridge, somehow the margin that is coming from drugs needs to be linked to the value of the drug. Otherwise, you will get pharmacies that are going to start having problems.
Well, we've started just in the robot, for example. I've said, take out anything that we do not do more than 10 of in a month.
Yeah.
We're not going to keep that stock.
Yeah. Well, I mean, is that good for patient care?
It's not. But what can I do?
Yeah.
Because I've got to make a little bit of a decision. as to like, because we did an audit like that.
Yeah.
And it was going into the thousands of pounds of stuff that goes out of date.
Yeah.
And that's with a robot. That's
Yeah.
date checking all your stuff yourself.
So if you think about it, if your margin is slim and you may not be receiving it anyway, and it all depends on dispensing, and then you add this into the mix, yeah. You tell me I've got 200 million. It just doesn't mean anything to me in my business.
But, go on.
I don't think it should be. We should get the remuneration in that way, and this is something I was talking to you about before. Is like we need to change the model. Okay, the model needs to change, and ultimately, if we're getting, and you talked about deprived areas not having, where he could rely on private services to build his business. In deprived areas, they can't rely on private business but they're still serving a large population of people. So how do we manage those pharmacies, because they're really essential to provide that care to that thing. So we need to move towards a slightly similar model to what the GP practices are doing. So GPs are funded differently to pharmacies, whereby they're given funding per patient that are listed to them. So I think if a patient is nominated to a pharmacy, if we're paid that £17 even per patient that's nominated to the pharmacy, what that will give to the pharmacy is the ability to provide infrastructure. We can then suddenly say we're gonna be able to. We know that we've got 5,000 patients nominated to our pharmacy. We can then invest into, and we're funded for those things.
We know 200 million should be in margin. That leaves a 140 million increase, and I think that's going to be distributed, a large portion of it, single activity fee. So it'll go up 6p. So from £1.46 to £1.52. Now, 6p increase per item. It's an increase per item, but
what have you bought for 6p in the last decade?
You were supposed to be supportive of the contract, even though I had the worst contract I've ever heard. You know what I mean?
No, I'm saying it's good overall,
But I think that it's a valid point where we look at costs. And I think we're all facing the same issue at the moment. Costs have drastically gone up.
Yeah.
You look at workforce costs.
Yeah.
You look at the general overheads of running a business.
Mm-hmm.
It's at some point where I think those are the challenges that I think when things are being considered around it are not being considered.
Yeah, I think like you said, with the wage increases on staff, we're asking them to do more work, so they're going to ask for more funding. Or not only more funding, but we need another person to do the job, another pharmacist in the store or another dispenser we need. And we're bombarded with costs, which, we don't have the funding for. That 6p is not going to cut it by any means.
Are you sure? Right. So, I think it's a good job you mentioned costs there, right? Because I have a big problem with any funding announcement that we ever receive year on, year out. Because what they'll say is, there's another 100 million for this, another 200 million for that. When I drill down into it, I sometimes sit there thinking, well, for me, I might get an extra 20,000, let's say, for a branch, extra funding. And then when I look at the cost of service delivery, it'll cost me like 22,000 to get it out the door. And so we get these funds. So now it seems like, just like you said, they're closing the funding gap, And I've got to say, in margin, at least we're doing the same thing that we were doing before. Dispensing. The problem is, every time anyone's looked at any service or any funding coming our way, no one really seems to cost it at all or account for the cost of it or put that into some sort of even because everyone's costs are different. So it's difficult to do. I understand. But a lot of the time you could easily have another $500 million increase in funding. But if it costs you more to deliver it, it's not worth anything, is it?
So it goes back to, I think, when we first did the CPCF, consultations and stuff prior to Pharmacy First. And I think some guy who did the pilot and stuff, and he was like, £12 is quite a lot.
Yeah.
And they're like, don't worry, you can still get on with your day-to-day. It doesn't matter if you get interrupted halfway through a consultation to get your to get your thing checked and stuff like that. And I'm like, hold on, this isn't what, you can't deliver a consultation, then halfway through your dispensers are coming in and saying, just sign this please, because Mrs. X is waiting out there. I don't know who's doing these pilots. Are they actually reflective of what kind of
mean,
standard we want to be?
Look, like, we're in line with that point.
His name's
I think
Sean. Oh.
Sean,
Yeah,
sorry.
It's only been a couple of hours now.
You got smaller pharmacies that actually are doing have a smaller population base, doing less items. Those pharmacies are going to be the ones that have the capacity to offer these services, to do those things. So they'll be able to say, we can all suddenly do 20 appointments a day, because that pharmacist isn't busy the way the same person, like, our pharmacist inside a health center, he's at the front desk dealing with query after query after query. There's no way.
But is that something that needs to change within community pharmacy then? Actually, like, I think one of our problems is we're too accessible. We're the only person who...
Too accessible.
Yeah, there's no one needs an appointment to come and see us. Which other health professionals do you get to see without an appointment? Yeah. So people come in, but I think we need to change that. We need to be like, you know what? Wait over there.
But is that not necessarily our USP?
But do we get funded for it?
I think that's key. So I think losing accessibility would be shooting ourselves in the foot, because right now, especially from an NHS point of view, because right now, when it comes to the NHS, they've already got problems in other parts of the system. So the solution for pharmacy is accessibility.
Have a practice payment for this accessibility.
Yeah. Or we used to have a practice payment.
But that's just gone.
Yeah.
So we're like, why have we not got that?
Right. You're definitely not going to be supportive of any contract anymore. You've been banned.
I'm saying it's better than it was before. I'm still saying it's better than before.
I need someone else.
He makes
on the best you can find.
He makes a really valid point. I think, again, it goes to, we are still very much part of the primary care teams. And we talked about this earlier. It's like when they look at pharmacy, they shouldn't see, they talk about GPs, they talk about other things, and then they say, and pharmacy. It shouldn't be and pharmacy. We're very much part of the same mix. So when it comes to funding for our rents, our rates, pubs are getting paid for their rates. We're not. So these kind of things are really important.
Business rates is a big thing, right? So a lot of primary care, a lot of it gets paid business rates, rent and rates, get paid. And you're right, they're paying for pubs and reducing rates for pubs is what we heard. So, a pharmacy can potentially close, but you'll keep a pub open. And don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of pubs. I'm a big fan of pubs. But I'd like to see them both there. Do you know what I mean? Because after a day at the pharmacy, you need to go to the pub, right?
Or the other way. After you've been to the pub, you might need to visit the pub.
The other big development in the contract or the settlement is independent prescribing. Now, we all know pharmacists are now qualifying as independent prescribers. Independent prescribing is probably going to be the next big thing in community pharmacy. It might affect us or probably will affect us for decades to come. And this is something, the clinical service that I would say most people in the industry were kind of really excited about and couldn't wait for. It's been announced, and the budget is basically £500 setup fee, £500 odd infrastructure fee monthly, and a £17 service fee for conducting the service as an independent prescriber. What are your thoughts on this? Who's going to take it first?
Go on, Cash.
No, you guys.
No. Yeah, he talks too much.
I think
He's going to go on again in the GP practice.
This is the way we do it.
So it's a bit of a soft launch, isn't it? And the way I kind of see it, the good news is if that money is not allocated towards that IP thing, as I understand it, that money comes back into the contract in other ways.
Yeah, I think this is an important point. I think from what I can gather, there's the global sum.
Yeah.
There's not been a separate envelope for independent prescribing.
Yeah.
If anyone does do any of this or take advantage of it, it will be either less for everyone else because it's coming out of the global sum. If nobody does it, then it remains within there.
Yeah.
But whoever does do it, it will come out of the global sum. So there's no extra envelope of money for this.
Yeah. So basically, if nobody does it and talks with their feet and decides that this isn't enough money.
But why would they do that?
Why would you? So it's the
Why
same
would
thing.
you not do it?
Because in effect, you're doing extra work for not extra money. As a if we're working as a whole, like
It's not new money, so
there's nothing new there. And I don't think anyone agrees with £17 a consultation. It's only when you start adding these extra monthly fee and stuff. So you see people now saying, oh, actually, it's £6,000 extra. Like, I could do with that. But you're kind of taking £6,000 away from everyone else each time. So it's up to everyone. If everyone's not happy with it, don't do it. And they'll get the message that that's not enough money.
But do you think our representatives should have accepted this contract? 'Cause I've got an issue with it. Obviously, it's the way I've phrased the question.
What would your alternative be, though? I think the way it's been done is actually quite good as a whole, because if you're not happy with it, don't do it.
Okay, I'll approach that in a second. Go on, Suraj.
I don't think £17 is equitable.
Yeah.
If you asked our GP colleagues, for example, to say, would you accept that? I think Cash, you're going to, exactly. So I think my point is that IP in itself is still fairly new as a concept. Yeah, and I know there's a lot of IPs out there, and there is a lot of clinical responsibility that goes in when you're prescribing something.
I see a big problem here, a really big problem. Overall, like people can have the pluses and negatives about the contract and whether it was appropriate or whether it's not, and that's personal opinion, right? Now, this is something that's going to affect the next 10 or 20 years. So it's something that had to be thought about very hard, because you make a mistake now, right at the bottom, at the starting point, the building blocks of it, you've shot yourself in the foot for the next 2 decades, potentially, or more. So I think here, I understand the principle that actually, if you don't think it's worthwhile, everyone doesn't think it's worthwhile, it's not going to happen. But that's not realistic when you think about what happens in real life business. And I'll give you a few examples. If you're in your 50s, I'm sure some of us are, and you are considering exiting the market, this is a £500 a month infrastructure fee. Now, an infrastructure fee is the sort of thing that they can take away whenever they want. But it's here for now because they need the service up and running, right? So if you need the service up and running, that's quite a big chunk. If you've got, for example, 10 branches or 20 branches in the case of Suraj, if you're telling him don't do it, but he's leaving £10,000 a month of just infrastructure fee on the table.
If nobody does it, that money's coming into us anyway.
It is. But he can have whatever.
So we always talk about unity. All of us always talk about unity.
I get it.
But that's the problem again, isn't it? None of us are actually done, because everyone thinks about, there's another 10 grand there. There's another this there. So that's, and everyone wants to bash CPE. If you want to bash CPE and everything and say and go back to the government and say, that's not good enough. Do the right thing. Don't do the service. But if you want to, you can't talk that talk, saying this isn't good enough, this contract's not good enough, but I'm going to do it to maximize my own kind of thing.
No, it's not mind. This is what I'm saying. The reality is, there's plenty of contractors out there, and some are owned by, they're just random shareholders, right? There's shareholders who are trying to maximize what they got to do because they've got to hit this quarter. There's some people who are looking to sell up this year or next year. They need to maximize their funding for this year, next year. There's a lot of things that are happening in the network that unity doesn't work, because when you're a CPE representative and you're saying, there's a good point, why are you bashing CPE? At the end of the day, you don't have to do it. I know, but they were supposed to make a decision on the collective, So you're turning around saying, you've got to do, boo, you've got to do the greater good. It's like, I'm not Jesus. Do you know what I mean? This is what do you want from me? I'm a contractor. I'm going to have to do what's best. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to have to do what's best for me. And this is where I think when it comes to CPE, I generally in the contract, I mean, we'll give a verdict on the contract. Pluses and negatives, but this could be fatal. Now, however, if you said to me that the committee got together, they got all the information together, committee, the executive, the whole CPE, they got the information together, they thought about it, they thought the strategy is, it's so low, it's not going to work, and this is the way forward. I would accept that if this was a strategy. Did you think there's a strategy?
There are CPE reps who I've talked to.
Yeah.
There's been a couple.
Yeah, it's not a strategy.
I don't know. We don't know what the strategy is, but
I don't think anybody does.
We all know that the same thing happened with the contraception service.
It's not the same. There was an infrastructure payment.
was an infrastructure
So
payment,
that
that's
is
right.
vitally different.
Okay, that's true.
So the infrastructure payment is made the cost of the, because the infrastructure payment, in effect, it all depends on what we have to do for the infrastructure for a start. Yeah. The problem we've got is that is equivalent to something like 30 consults almost at £17 a consult. They're already banked from minute one.
Yeah.
So now,
So you're happy with it?
No, not at all. I'm not happy with it. I'm happy because I want the best for the profession. I don't care about what I need in my pocket right now.
You're doing both things, aren't you? One second you're telling me like, oh, we got to do it.
But
And then
I
the
think-
second
I don't say we've got to do it. I never said that at all.
So what are you going to do?
No,
No,
I think,
I don't know. It's not up to
But
me. It's
he's
going to be
saying
up
by
to
not
you.
doing
your
it.
branch is what you do.
No, it's not. They're not mine. I have two other directors. We've got to vote on this. We're going to have to sit there. We're going to have a discussion because right now the service spec isn't released. Yeah?
Yeah.
So the service spec isn't released. I don't know what's involved. More importantly, this is an easy one because it's easy for me to say I ain't going to do it. You know why? I don't have IPs.
Yeah.
They're not in the branch. So like right now, forget, are you going to do it? I couldn't do it if I wanted to. So I'm already, so it's
No,
easy
but
for me
that's
to
what-
say that.
Look, the point of it is that you should be able to recruit somebody
Yeah.
in order to do it. But that funding is not going to enable you to do that. That £500 is not going to be enough infrastructure costs.
what Sean is saying, then just don't do
But
it.
he's saying by not doing it, we're going to still get that money. So
Yeah, exactly.
So it's better to not do it in that scenario.
100% is better to not do it. But this is where my
everyone
problem
doesn't
is.
do it.
yeah, but the problem you've got here at
Yeah.
the moment is we've just talked about the pressures we've all got,
Yep.
and in a way, you're kind of being cornered here, because actually, let's say whether you've got one pharmacy or you've got multiple, right? The principle at the moment is we are under financial pressure, right? And when you are told that there is this new service and this funding is attached to it, I think it's very hard. Yes, we're all saying that the unity aspect of it is we shouldn't do the service, but we haven't got glorious days in terms of our finances and the amount of money we're making.
I ain't no Messiah.
But look,
As much as you guys
don't worry, you're far from being a
It's
messiah.
going back to
Don't
the same
worry.
thing. You're going to get that money though. If everyone doesn't do it, that money's still coming in. So like,
No, but you will get But if other people don't,
Yeah, but
do it
how
and
many-
you do-
how many are we
no,
actually
no,
talking
no,
about?
But what I'm saying is, Sean, there's going to be people out there who think if other people don't do it and I do, they get an extra share. They'll get their person's
So you're
share.
convincing me to do it now.
I'm not.
What's going to happen is
I came in with
I haven't,
do
got,
it.
I haven't even got an IP. No. We've discussed a lot about what we think is good and what we think is bad about the contract. What changes would you like to see? If you got someone now that the people representing us, if they were listening, what changes would you like to see? I'll start off with Cash.
Surprise.
So yeah.
He's like, where do I start? I've got a lot. Get comfortable.
To get this off my chest.
Yeah.
So look, I think it's how the funding is given to us. I think how the money comes to us. I think it needs to be proportionate to. I've always talked about how we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We're doing similar to how GP practices are funded. I'm saying look at the similar model for pharmacies as well. We've got nominations to pharmacies. Those nominations should then reflect our level of funding. So that means not only
Like per capita, you mean like surgeries?
yeah.
Is that what you
so
think?
so that's how they'll do it for.
So just a bit of background, by the way. Kashif, he was probably one of the earlier IPs and he's been working closely within practice and pharmacy for many years. So there's not many
15
people.
years.
There's probably
Oh,
not
yeah.
as many people with experience on both sides of general practice and pharmacy as much as and a contractor, of course. Yeah.
So, I mean, look, we need to work in harmony with the way that they're doing things, okay? There are some learnings from how GP practices are funded. They are too underfunded. So don't get me wrong, thinking that they've got the model right completely. They still need further funding as well to survive and to, meet the 21st century demands from patients, okay? The same thing goes for pharmacy. We are underfunded. We're always being funded by what the work we do. And the work we do, that will get paid to us 2 months after the time and the event. What about the money for, starting the service? Do we have that? No. So what I'm suggesting is that the funding be at the £17 or it should be maybe per nomination that we have. So patients registered to us should be the place that we should be looking at as the way of funding us. If we do that, that gives us the ability to turn around and say, right, we've got, I don't know, 5,000, 7,000 patients nominated to our pharmacies. If we're getting paid for those things, and that will be the KPIs could hold us to that. So we're going to be delivering services to all those patients. So we can then call those patients in for reviews, appointments, and do those consultations, because we've then gone and hired a pharmacist who is an IP, who's doing those consultations. We've got admin staff doing all the background paperwork and doing all the things that need to be done, because we've got that money in hand. We're there. What the model that they're suggesting is, do it ad hocly, and I just don't think anyone can predict who's going to walk through the door and how that model works. And it hasn't worked when it comes to contraception service. It hasn't worked with this because we can't predict. The unpredictability makes it not sustainable as a business to set up as an infrastructure to provide that. So what I'm suggesting is that we need to move to a slightly different way of how pharmacies are funded.
So I think what you're suggesting is a fundamental change in the way the contract is delivered altogether. Now, I think you're kind of touching on some good points here. Like, if you know that you've got a certain patient base, I think what you're trying to say is, because I've seen you work, you take ownership of it. What you need to do is take ownership of this population base. So in other words, you're responsible for a lot of their outcomes, a lot of the repeat prescribing, a lot of the diagnostics. You take ownership of a patient
100%.
base, and then I think, because I've seen Kashif work, he seems to be a lot further ahead in terms of clinical practice between collaboration between pharmacies and surgeries than because I haven't seen it, and I'll be honest, it's beyond me. I'm not a practice pharmacist, and I've seen it though, and I know that there's definitely a future in what he's saying. I think taking ownership is the key.
Even those
here.
deprived areas that we talked
Yep.
about, we can serve them all of a sudden, because we're getting paid for the number of people there.
Yeah.
You're suddenly able to serve that population the same way that the GPs were able to give them.
But it's
consult.
interesting that the BMA were pushing for an activity fee rather than that whole model of
Per capita fee.
per appointment.
Yeah.
They were pushing recently for changing their model more to our model. So it's just a little bit different.
So it's almost like they've got their own. It's a global sum, isn't it? They get a certain amount, and it doesn't matter how many appointments hit them. So it's not necessarily.
But look, GPs have QOF targets, so those things come into it as well. So they do get activity.
But we
fees.
know what QOF target is, a bit like PQS, isn't it? A lot of it becomes box ticking exercises, and are they all the highest patient care?
They do need to recall and review patients. There is a workload attached to it. It's not just a box ticking situation. That's as us as pharmacists, but I'm telling you, in general practice, there is a lot of work involved. A lot.
I think the key thing is that where you said ownership, I'd say it's more empowerment.
Okay.
Yeah. I agree with Cash that that's one model to look at, but equally, like you said, Sean, the GPs have got that, and they want to go to kind of what we've got, right?
Okay. So what changes would you like to see? Was the question.
I want to see more empowerment in terms of our representatives, wherever they are, be it a CP or wherever. Think about the fact that, am I empowering the community pharmacy owner to go out there and deliver to the patient?
That sounds really wishy-washy. What does that mean, empowerment? It sounds like fight the power. Yeah.
I think it is more
money.
that.
Exactly. And the power comes from the money that he's given. Otherwise, he can't go.
I've got no power.
Fight the power. But I don't feel like I have at the moment. And whether that's translated via the funding, yes, absolutely.
I mean, when I say our reps, they're responsible to organise funding for the whole industry, right? So we can say what we want. He's got a completely different model towards how you'd like to see it. We all know there needs to be different funding, but they also know that as well. But I would say they're probably going to say, look, guys, there's no unity between direction about how they should approach funding models. And some people want it in dispensing, and some people want more clinical services, and some people want completely different models.
I mean, look, even with the model that I'm suggesting, there are going to be some areas where they've got, in the likes of Surrey, where he's at in Richmond and all those things, where you've got affluent people who probably don't have the activity for pharmacies or GP practice is not very much, because they're people that are generally well. Where in more deprived areas and you've got ill people. So I think the funding towards that per capita for those pharmacies should be somewhat dependent on the area that you're serving and the activity and that's happening. And they do that within general practices. So some practices are funded differently to other GP practices.
So
they
it's
both
all-
have GMC
yeah.
contracts, but the contract, depending on where it is, depends on how much the local ICBs or they determine how much they should get funded. In a similar fashion, it should happen with pharmacies. So pharmacies where they are in affluent areas and they're doing private services, they've got funding of other sorts coming through. Perhaps they don't need that per capita funding the same way as somewhere where it's deprived and they do need that extra.
There was talk of that on the NHS England webinar about the fact that ICBs will be able to then subsequently fund more if they feel in certain areas around the prescribing element and stuff like that. I do agree with Cassius that there should be this element of looking at what are your local population needs. Yes, CP has set a baseline contract, but actually, what is the local needs of the population? So, do you have more of a base of patients that are diabetic, for example, and things like insulin initiations, things like that, and that you are then allowing. We talked about access, and that's our fundamental USP, that patients, because we are accessible, want to come to us. So I think there is an important in that being changed.
What changes would you like to see?
I think two things we need:
Yeah.
stability
Yeah.
and transparency.
Okay.
So basically, we need to know what we've got. Like Suraj was saying, we need that empowerment, but that empowerment comes from those two things. If we've got those two things, then we know what we've got, and we know we can go out there and make a difference.
And less of the unknown.
Less of that. I think that I don't think anyone can disagree with kind of what any of you guys are saying. I'm probably similar sort of camp. I think the main thing is I'm not an independent prescriber, so I'm not the best person to talk about how to roll out clinical services, but I know that that's definitely the future, yeah? But in terms of like from a businessman's perspective, yeah, what I would say is really important that we factor in the cost of service delivery. And I think that always gets lost in any conversation, because whenever we get the funding, first thing I look at is how much is it going to cost me to deliver this? How do I roll this out? What are the real true costs? Not another. So when I say the real true costs, whenever anything has come our way in any way, shape or form at the moment, it always seems to be like an addition, but at some point I'm going to have to make that one extra hire. And that one extra hire, even at minimum wage, costs 25 to 30,000 a year. Yeah. So right now, a lot of these services are fine as long as there's a little bit extra, but it gets to a point where you're maxed out, and now any extra bit you need an extra hire, and the services don't fund themselves. They're not enough to be able to fund themselves. So I think I would like whoever's negotiating to really consider the cost of service delivery before accepting anything. Answer yes or no. You guys are sat there. You've been given this contract in front of you. You can either accept it or reject it. You know all the things that could happen if you reject it, what you have to lose. You know that we've accepted it. So what would you do, starting with Suraj?
No.
You would have rejected it.
Yeah.
And you would have walked away.
Yeah.
And potentially left. Well, forget it. You know.
They need to, rejected it, renegotiate it.
I would have accepted it.
You would have accepted it. Yeah. And I think well, it's obvious from the way I've come across. I think for me personally, I think the IP thing was one of the key things. Other than that, it would have been a toss up to work out how much the cost benefit was.
Yeah, I agree.
I think the IP thing just it made it impossible for me to be able to sign off on this. It's too much of an unknown. Guys, I need you to join my revolution, make pharmacy great again. Yeah, so it's actually just a bunch of merch that comes your way. So everyone gets merch, and you have to. Oh, sorry.
Why did you vote for it?
You'll have a cap in there, so everyone put their caps on. Oh, it's going to ruin your haircut.
And mine too.
I'm going to do it.
What's this? Make booze pharmacy great again.
Yeah, I'd love that. I'd love that. I think we've been significantly undervalued, and I think pharmacy as a profession has been taking a kicking. So I think it's up to us, especially us here.
Yeah.
Yeah. to do
do it.
everything we can for the profession. And that means putting your cap on sideways as
Yeah,
though you're
exactly.
like,
You gotta-
like, battler. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that might lose the message if you do it back to front.
Yeah.
They can't see the message
new
anymore.
sticker.
All right, yeah, okay. Right, guys, I've got my AI generated questions for the quick fire round. So I have no idea what they are. So I'm going to, because there's a lot more of you, there's 3 of you as opposed to a normal single guest, I'm going to have to be a quick. So 1 word answers on this. If you were not in pharmacy, what would you be doing?
Wow, that's not very quick. I'd be in real estate. No, I don't know what. No, hang on. Let me do that again. Let me do that again. Yeah. If I was, I'd be in the GP surgery.
Right. If you're not, pilot. Funky. Yeah. Should have guessed with the shirt. You've got something about him.
Farmer.
What?
Farmer.
A literal
Farmer industry.
farmer boy.
Oh, literally farmer. I thought farmer industry. A farmer in the UK. It's a hard slog. That's talk about as though pharmacy was a hard enough. You went and chose an industry. That's probably the only industry that's even worse. Do you know what I mean? Right, okay. Right. Suraj, what's more likely? Proper pharmacy funding or England winning the World Cup?
Neither.
Sean, what's more likely?
World Cup.
Wow, that's like a,
Come on, we're in the top 5.
Yeah, there's a good chance.
Yeah, England winning the world.
Yeah, all right, okay. So a bit of an eco question here. Right, so who's first now? Suraj, right? No, who's first? Sean?
Me.
Sean, okay. Would you drive a Tesla, Ferrari, or would you get an Uber?
Ferrari.
Why? Who would ever
Which
choose
AI
to-
is this?
Yeah, who would ever choose Thingy?
Ferrari.
Yeah, well, I don't think that was a hard one, really. But it shows you about the eco credentials anyway. So, anyway, thanks, guys. It was great to have you on the Pharmacy Planet podcast. That's a wrap.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Order! The pharmacy contract must proceed.
Your Honor, this contract is unacceptable.
I concur. Order! The verdict is denied.